Superfanatics, Superfanatics, comic books, friends, fun discussion, video show. Superfanatics, 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 comic books, friends, fun discussion, video show.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Superfanatics. I'm Nicholas.
I'm Bender.
And today we're going to be discussing a little bit of some Spider-Man.
Yes, particularly one arc that is titled Shed. It's Amazing Spider-Man issues 630 through 633. Part of a story, an overall story called the Gauntlet. So really, we're kind of like breaking down this story that's part of this story that's part of this story that is Amazing Spider-Man Shed.
Yeah, so you get, in this story, as we said, 630, 631, 632, and 633. And the Shed story is the final book, if you will, of a 5-part book series that is called The Gauntlet, which is a lead-in to Grim Hunt, which is a sequel to 1987's Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt.
This is one of those times on this show where we get to talk about something that's like really ingrained in like the comic, I don't know, culture, for lack of a better term. Something that like happened here but relates to something here and also sets up this and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I've read Kraven's Last Hunt. I've read Shed too. It's been a little bit, but Kraven's Last Hunt features one of my favorite covers of all time, and I believe I posted it on our Instagram before, so, check us out on there. But I really enjoy Shed as well.
Yeah, Shed is a great book, a great series of books that's a book in itself. It's part of a bigger
an arc.
book.
We'll call it an arc just for this particular episode.
But yeah, the Gauntlet, which it's kind of the wrap-up of, the Gauntlet was a series of 5 stories where Spider-Man had to go back through a gauntlet of his most famous, fearsome foes. And it's different than a lot of events that happen in comics because it wasn't necessarily like... it didn't span the entire Marvel universe. It was specific to Amazing Spider-Man. And also it was different in the fact that there wasn't one person that all of these villains were answering to. There were people pulling the strings behind the scenes to make sure that Peter Parker just got his ass handed to him for fucking, half a year or close to a year. I don't remember exactly how many issues this was. It was a long time. It was a series of Peter Parker's being tested emotionally, physically. By the end of Shed, he is just completely spent. So when you get to Grim Hunt, he's at his weakest that he's been maybe ever. But none of the villains that he faces throughout the Gauntlet are aware of this sort of background plot that's being planned against him.
Right. And I think throughout the Gauntlet, I know he faces Vulture, faces Mysterio,
Juggernaut,
Rhino,
yeah, Mysterio,
and Lizard, obviously in Shed. I think those are your 5 main villains that Spider-Man has to fight off. And in a lot of these books, the villains kind of underwent a rebirth, so to speak. They were written a little bit differently, or they maybe gained like some new powers or something, but they were presented in a different light. And
I think
it challenged Spider-Man to have to fight them differently than he had before.
Yeah, and they were given different motivations that almost, in some cases, made the reader a bit more sympathetic to why they were coming after him.
Right.
Their motivations were complex, and the same happens in this book where you're dealing with the lizard, or Kurt Connors. When it starts off in part 1, issue 630 it would have been, you see Kurt Connors, he's kind of reformed. He's keeping the lizard at bay these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he's working in a lab, and you can tell, they give you a hint pretty early on that he's still battling the lizard part of his brain. It's
Right.
still speaking to him in a sense.
He's fighting to keep it at bay. He struggles to maintain his humanity, really. He has this voice in the back of his head, this lizard part of him, this reptilian part of him that wants to take over and wants to come out. And I think his track record at this point is that he's done pretty well, but we're coming in on this story with Connors, and he's been battling it for a while, and we kind of see like the end of his rope.
Yeah, he ends up having a confrontation with a higher up, a suit from the lab, who walks in and is kind of making advances towards a girl that you can tell Connors has a romantic interest in, and that rubs him the wrong way. That leads to a physical altercation between the two, and at one point during this fight, Connors is reaching for a serum, and because this gentleman knows Connors' past, he says, no, you're not going to get that, you're not going to turn yourself into a lizard. Mm-hmm. And so he holds him back from it, and the surprise there is that serum was what he was taking to keep himself from becoming the lizard.
Right.
So the lizard comes out because of this guy, assuming he's going to stop him, and really what he does is he facilitates Connors turning back into the lizard once again. And there's a whole bloody scene there. Spider-Man shows up, and you hear from the police that there was a body count of 6. So it escalates pretty quickly.
And, from this, Connors, he sets off to find his son, sort of out of instinct. What you have to remember when you're reading this is that, like, it's really well done how they write that Connors is acting completely on instinct. And the instincts of a lizard, so you have, like, basically the most powerful is the one that's most regarded. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what he tries to set himself up to be. So he's trying to find his offspring, basically. Spider-Man tries to cut him off at one point. You know, there's a couple fights between the Lizard and Spider-Man throughout this series, and
all of which look awesome.
Yeah,
that's
really
one
do.
thing you don't want to forget about this series. I think one of my favorite things about it is the artwork.
Yeah, the artwork is really great. And it also should be noted that when the Lizard appears in this, you know, as I said, much like the other villains throughout the Gauntlet, there's something different about the Lizard this time around. He even kind of goes through a little bit of a metamorphosis and is drawn differently. His character sort of evolves, and it's super awesome. Mm-hmm. I love the way Lizard looks after he comes out on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, he becomes almost a whole different opponent for Spider-Man to face.
I even wrote down myself when I was reading this, he becomes like a superior lizard.
Oh, yeah.
To put it in the terms of Spider-Man these days. But, Spider-Man goes to stop him. On his way, during their fight, he ends up finding a woman who has been injured because of their battle. And he goes to help her, and this gives the Lizard time to escape. But before he escapes, Spider-Man throws a tracer on him, talks to the woman. She tells Spidey that Connor's son was taken by a mysterious woman who might have something to do with this background story that we're not going to really get into here because it's much too complex and large for the scope of this particular episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, this lady leaves Billy Connors for the Lizard to find him, but by the time Spidey gets to those two, it looks like some destruction has happened. There's just rubble everywhere, and Spidey starts digging through, and he ends up finding the Lizard, which leads to another beautifully drawn battle.
Right.
And during this battle, you see some of the Lizard's new powers. and one of those is his ability to kind of influence people with telepathy.
Right. He has the ability now to tap into the reptilian part of everyone's brain. So in this particular battle, after Spider-Man finds him in the rubble, Connors he's sort of full lizard now, so to speak. He's lost almost all of his humanity.
But the lizard can now use the human intellect.
Right. And so he appeals to Spider-Man's fight or flight instinct, basically, and Spider-Man runs off almost unwillingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lizard, sort of in the the climax of this series, or this arc, the lizard kind of goes around New York and begins kind of activating people's sense. You know, it's almost like he's trying to turn all of New York into lizard underlings, so to speak. And Spider-Man is tasked with figuring out how to stop that.
He takes some of the serum himself to kind of guard himself from becoming a reptilian, for lack of a better term, and then goes back into this final battle with the lizard to try and stop him. And the cool thing about the way it wraps up is that it's not just a slugfest. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, he has to use his mental faculties. He has to use his cunning to try and come up with a way where he can stop the lizard, because brute force just isn't going to do it here. So it's a really cool way to end it. And so much has been put forth by Peter in the books of the Gauntlet up to this point. What he sees and what he experiences in this final chapter, if you will, of the Gauntlet really has him pretty broken down heading into Grim Hunt, which is it's basically the I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's the concept. It's the point of the whole thing. The entire run of books in the Gauntlet is just you watching Peter Parker, Spider-Man, get worn down over a period of time, so that when what happens next occurs, like I said earlier, you are seeing Peter Parker, you're seeing Spider-Man at his weakest you've ever seen him, and then he has to fight, at that point, his greatest battle he's ever fought.
Right. It's kind of like, it's like, this is why we read comics. To have a series that runs for so long, it's still, to this day, sort of baffles me that Amazing Spider-Man ran for 700 issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just crazy. But it's a real testament to, like, the writers and how many different writers there have been. Particularly this arc was written by Zeb Wells. And to see, like, him set up the Gauntlet, and Spider-Man has to go through all this stuff, and then to come out of it on the other side, broken and defeated, and then enter into one of his greatest battles up to that point with Grim Hunt. And then Grim Hunt being the sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt, and from the 80s, and tying that all together, it's just really, like, it's, no pun intended, a marvel to see.
Yeah. Amazing.
It's amazing. And I love that comics are able to do that for me, that they're able to call into play things that have happened years and years and years ago, in our world, like in our timeline, things that go along, that happened so long ago, and they bring it back into play so many years afterwards. And it's really cool. It's a testament to fandom too, for Zeb to recognize that and to make that play into what he's writing currently.
Yeah.
Currently, for the time. This was back in 2009 and 2010.
Right. So a lot's happened since this, but this is a great Spider-Man story, and it's a place that you could jump in with just the information that we've given you and read the Shed story by itself, and then go on from there if you want to. Zeb Wells does an awesome job. The artwork by Chris Bacallo is amazing as well. And I found out when I was reading some information on him that he did artwork on a series called Shade the Changing Man.
The Changing Man?
Yeah, back in 1990. Ran for a few years. So, yeah, the Shade the Changing Girl now is a young animal book.
Right.
Anyway, that's about all we got for this week, so maybe we'll hit Old Man Logan next time.
Yeah, we're going to try to.
Okay.
So until then, I'm Bender.
I'm Nicholas.
Check out Shed from Amazing Spider-Man, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Super fanatics, super fanatics, super fanatics.